So real quick, before we start today's episode, I just want to give you my opinion on Captain America: The Winter Soldier. Bottom line is, this movie is great, and it may just be Marvel's best movie so far. The action is intense and genuinely thrilling. The story is complex enough where it'll make you think, but not so complex that you'll be confused. The cast is just wonderful. Everybody from the returning actors, Chris Evans, Scarlett Johansson, Sam Jackson, to the new characters like Anthony Mackie and Robert Redford, just perfect. And I liked the character of the Winter Soldier before, but now after seeing the movie, I like him even more. I really need to start reading more of his stuff. So yeah, if you haven't seen it yet, go fix that, go see the movie, and make sure you stay through the whole credits. Just don't be one of these assholes who leaves right when the movie ends. There have been 9 of these things. You should know by now to stay for the whole thing. Anyway, on with the show. So I realized that out of the last 5 or 6 episodes I've done, 4 or 5 of them have been about Batman in some way. And I'm sure I can go on and on about Batman until the end of time, but that's not what this show is about. It's about comics in general, and all kinds, from mainstream to indie, from superhero to teen drama. So today I want to talk about a character who's nothing like Batman in any way. Today I want to talk about Daredevil. Now most of you probably only know the character from the 2003 movie with Ben Affleck. Now I'm not going to sit here and try to defend that movie. I understand why people don't like it, and honestly it's a very hard movie to defend. Even the director's cut, which is a much better film, doesn't compare to a lot of comic book movies out there. But I feel like this movie really tainted what Daredevil is in the public eye, much like how the '95 Stallone Judge Dredd really tainted how that character is viewed. Whenever I tell people to read Daredevil, their reaction is generally the same. It's always like, why the hell would I want to read about a blind superhero? That's lame. First of all, that's discriminatory. Just because he's handicapped doesn't mean he can't do certain things like an able-bodied person can. Secondly, and people who are super into comics know this already, since the 80s, Daredevil has often been the best thing Marvel puts out. Of course, that's not to say that it's been 30 years of solid hits. There hasn't. There have been some stinkers in there. The Shadowland story was pretty bad, and there was a period in the 90s where Daredevil looked like this. Extreme. But there are 3 specific periods of Daredevil that are often considered the best superhero comics of their era. The Frank Miller run, the Brian Michael Bendis run, and the Mark Waid run. Now, I've mentioned before that Frank Miller's most recent work has not exactly been good. But the reason myself and a lot of other people get so mad when they think of Frank Miller's current work is that for a time, back in the 80s especially, he was not only good, he was great. One of the best comic writers ever. And his work on Daredevil, his first big break in comics really, is proof of that. His original work on the character completely overhauled him from a C-list superhero to an A-list character, almost overnight. It was one of the first times a superhero got a true grim and gritty overhaul. And it worked very well in this instance because of the very concept of Daredevil. He's dressed like a devil, he works at a Hell's Kitchen in New York, and most of his villains aren't super flamboyant, they're all street-level criminals and thugs. Miller also introduced the concept of religion to Daredevil, something that a lot of writers haven't really tackled. Even today, they don't really mention it. It's a shame because that added another layer to the character that really don't see often in superhero comics. One of Frank Miller's stories, Born Again, with his Batman Year One artist David Mazzucchelli, it was a deep deconstruction of the character. It reduced him down to literally nothing, forcing him to refocus who he is and climb his way back up again. He's not even in his costume for most of it. So it's basically Iron Man 3, but years before, and in comic form. And with a completely different character. Now, the Brian Michael Bendis era began in 2001 and further continued Daredevil's spiral downward. He worked with artists like David Mack and especially Alex Maleev, who specialize in gritty pictures, and it just made everything darker and darker and darker. It all culminated with Daredevil's secret identity being leaked to the tabloids. Now the whole world knows that he's lawyer Matt Murdock. And here's one of the first times where we see a superhero's identity leaked to the public, and there's nothing he can do about it, and the villains take full advantage of it. Currently, Mark Waid is handling the writing duties on Daredevil. He has since 2011. This is a drastic departure from the Miller and Bendis style of Daredevil, and it returns the character to his more light-hearted roots, I guess you could say. But that's not to say these stories don't get dark. They do. They find Matt Murdock's dad's bones in his desk at his office, for God's sake. But the overall sense of the series is that for once in his life, Matt Murdock isn't angry anymore. He finally feels like he has his life on track. He has a positive outlook on things, and even when things get bleak and sad, really, really sad, Daredevil remembers that he's a superhero, and superheroes are supposed to be optimistic. Generally. Wade's work, along with artist Chris Samnee, is a nice change of pace, not just for the character, but superhero comics in general. This series debuted at around the same time DC launched the New 52. And while both titles have been generally darker and edgier and lean more adult, Daredevil has been generally trying to do the opposite, being more lighthearted while also remembering that there is a darkness, but only using it when absolutely necessary. Now, these are the three main eras of Daredevil, but there are definitely other stories worth checking out. Daredevil Yellow by Jeff Loeb and Tim Sale, Guardian Devil by Kevin Smith, Joe Quesada, and Jimmy Palmiotti, and The Devil in Cell Block D by Ed Brubaker and Michael Lark. All great stories. But I say, if you want to get started, definitely start with either the Miller era, the Bendis era, or the Wade era. They're pretty easy to get into, especially if you start at the beginning of the respective runs, and it will definitely change the way you look at not just Daredevil, but maybe superhero comics in general. What about you guys? Did you know Daredevil was awesome? Or is this the first time you're hearing such a crazy notion? Let me know in the comments below or on Facebook and Twitter. Share your favorite Daredevil moments, or what you thought of the stories I recommended, or if you have your own recommendations. And as always, like if you like, subscribe if you really like, please subscribe. Share this with your friends. Thank you so much for watching. I will see you next time. They wear, I don't want to say clothes, but Leo has bamboo armor. Mikey's got a sweater wrapped around him, and he wears like necklaces. Donnie's got the proton pack.
I mean, a game like that that's for kids, you shouldn't have to use a strategy guide. And in that game, you have to use a strategy guide.
Right.
You have to. And anybody who says they didn't is a liar.